Everyone's screaming about the pain from Trump's new tariffs. But what if the dominant narrative is dead wrong? I'll break down why the current path might be even worse and what no one's talking about.
Thing number one, Gary, the point you're making, or the question you're asking, excuse me, what if everyone is wrong? Curious what you have to say here, Gary. Thing number one is quite simply tariffs.
So, Rob, it's incredible to realize this, but it was only last Wednesday after the close that President Trump announced his new tariff plan. Um, it's only been
Yeah, that is actually crazy to think about. Seems like
it has only been 3 trading days, since we had Thursday, Friday, and today, Monday. So it's incredible to think about that. Now, what happened was when the president started his press conference, the market was up because the Wall Street Journal had incompletely reported that there were going to be 10% tariffs, and that was below what people were expecting. And people got really excited about that. Oh, good. It's not as bad as we thought. Well, the Wall Street Journal had it right, but not complete. There were 10% tariffs plus additional reciprocal tariffs. And as soon as he pulled out those visual aids and people saw the numbers, they realized, oh no. And the market, the equity indexes and the aftermarket trading, and I watch this stuff, religiously, went from up 2% to down 4%, literally in just a matter of minutes. Like, you watch the market crash as soon as they saw those charts. And people realized, wow, this is a lot bigger than we thought. Now, since then, the media went absolutely crazy. And, this is no surprise. They, certainly thought President Trump was wrong about everything. And the FinX community, the financial community on X, formerly Twitter, they went crazy. The free trade people were out there, banging the drum. And, people they've just lost their minds. They are angry and upset and emotional. And while I am certainly in favor of free trade, um, there are reciprocity issues here that matter. There are other issues besides just getting low cost stuff that matter. And I think a lot of the analysis that we've seen is incorrect. Last week, I wrote a lengthy piece that I posted to the DKI blog. You're welcome to go see it. I did not paywall it. I also posted the entire thing to X. It's pretty long. It's like 8 or 9 pages. And I went through my take on all of this stuff. And I went through the things that other people are looking at that I think that they're getting wrong. And so, people are complaining, understandably, about all the pain we're about to experience. And you know what, Rob? I actually think that they're right. We are going to experience some pain. And the analogy that I'd use here is when someone has a heroin addiction, detoxing is incredibly painful. And it's also necessary to save that person's life. Continuing to use heroin means today will be more comfortable at the expense of dying from the addiction in the future. And the way we ended up in this mess is we've spent the last 40 years selling off our manufacturing capacity. We've sold off our ability to make things. We export dollars and we receive goods. And in return for cheap goods, we've accumulated unpayable debt and other liabilities. So we can keep putting people on public assistance and in funding that with more inflation causing debt, but it's not going to fix the problem. And, people have said, okay, wait a minute, but, there's all this pain coming and it's going to take years before, if the Trump plan works, it's going to take years before people are able to build operating manufacturing plants here in the US. And, in the meantime, we're going to take pain. And why would we do this? Because we won't see the benefits for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Well, I don't know what they expected, but we've spent a good 40 or 50 years creating this problem, selling off our manufacturing capacity. We have half a century of a cheap money addiction, and changing that is going to be painful. And if it's going to take 3 or 4 or 5 years for factories to be built, do you want to start now? Or do you want to wait until the bond market cuts off our access to more debt? We then have a crash and have to build it under other people's terms and other people's timing. This is our opportunity to do it ourselves. But there's not going to be a quick, fast, painless path. And so the key thing that I would mention here is that the economy that we have, spending levels, the production we have, the lack of production we have, these are not sustainable. If we stay on our current status quo path pre-Trump tariffs, there is a 100% probability it ends in disaster. We need a different course. If people want to argue that the Trump plan isn't the right plan, okay, fair enough, but we need to be talking about doing something. The current path isn't working, and so there does need to be a course correction. Now, Rob, the piece that I wrote last week is far too long to go. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about it here, and in fact, we're going to later this week. We'll bring it up at the end of the segment. But I would just ask people to go take a look at the lengthier version of this and start to look at the arguments that people are making and see if they make sense and see if they hold up to logical, rigorous analysis. Be skeptical about what you're reading, because we certainly are.
Yeah, great point, Gary. And we encourage everybody to check that out on the DKI website. And yeah, would love any questions, comments. Please leave it either on that piece or even on this video as well for your thoughts, feedback, questions that you might have. Gary, as a follow-up to that, I mean, how does this fit with what you've been talking about, the they'll crash stocks to save bonds thesis? How does that fit into that whole discussion?
So, Rob, first of all, credit to Michael Guyed for that phrasing. He was the one who came up with, at least I think he was the one who came up with that. The first time I saw that phrasing was on his X account. They'll kill stocks to save bonds. But, here at DK,
Michael, I apologize on that. If that comes from Michael, that's Michael. Don't come from me.
There you go. This is a topic that we've been talking about a lot here. And basically, where we are right now is because prior Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen reduced the duration on the U.S. bond portfolio. New Treasury Secretary Bessent needs to refinance $7 trillion in the next 12 months. Unless he can do so at lower rates, we're going to have an even bigger budget problem, because our interest expense is well over $1 trillion right now and could easily be $1.5 trillion this year. So, last week, the NASDAQ was down 6% on Thursday. It was down another, 5-6% on Friday. The markets have been plummeting on this, while the yield on the 10-year Treasury at one point was actually under 4%. That is a gigantic decrease. It was, I think, 4.8% in mid-January. That is a huge, huge decrease. And so, we've been telling people the Trump administration is going to intentionally try to crash the stock market, pushing money out of stocks and into bonds. Well, what happens when people buy bonds? The price of bonds go up, the implicit yield comes down, and Bessent can refinance at lower rates. This is exactly what we told you that we were going to do. So, credit to Michael for the phrasing, but this is exactly, the administration told you they were going to do this. DKI has been telling you they're going to do this, and people somehow are surprised, but here we are. The last thing I would add on this, Rob, is it's really easy to talk about the advantages of free trade, but when some of your trading partners are using mercantilist policies to grab most of those benefits of free trade for themselves, it makes sense to reset expectations. So, one of the things that happened over the weekend after we put the written version of the 5 things to bed is Israel, Vietnam, Taiwan, and then today the EU all came to the White House and said, how about zero tariffs? Maybe you'll lower. 50 countries approached the White House over the weekend to start negotiations. Rob, it's a pretty good bet that 100% of those 50 countries wanted to talk about lower tariff rates. And so, if these are our friends and our allies and our trading partners, we should be asking the question, then why did it take all of this? Why did it take threats to get them to treat us fairly? Right? And so, listen, if people want to be critical of President Trump, that's fine. Feel free. Put it in the comments. We'll read it, right? You just give us the reason, and that's fine. But, everybody seems very upset by the idea of the U.S. raising tariff rates, but everyone seems perfectly fine with the fact that our so-called friends and allies have high tariffs against us. This is something that does need to be addressed. And whether you like his policies or not, President Trump's actions are forcing countries to come to the table. And the big one today was the EU saying, we're willing to talk about 0% tariffs. Now, the one thing I do want to add here is over the weekend, I read a phenomenal piece by Alex McCrease over at Contemplations on the Tree of Woe. And Alex wrote a piece called Balanced Trade, where he actually explains the thinking behind the Trump administration's tariff policies. All the people saying they're wrong, the math is wrong, they have no plan, they're flailing. This isn't true. And Alex explains exactly what they're thinking and the formulas and how they came about the plan that they have. Now, again, you might disagree with the plan and you're entitled to do that. That is perfectly fine, but at least understand what it is. And all the people in the press saying they don't know what they're doing, it's not true. They do have a plan. You just may not like it, or in the press, they may not understand it. So, what Alex and I are doing is this Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, he and I are going to do a live stream discussing this issue. And we're going to focus on what exactly is going on in the Trump administration, what their thinking is on tariffs, my ideas on, how to look at the analysis other people are doing and how to see, how people are thinking about this and some aspects of the analysis here that people are getting wrong. And we're going to go through all of that. We will be live streaming to my X account. That's at Gary_Brode, Brode. And I believe we're going to be live streaming for the first time to YouTube. For those of you who got us over 1,000 subscribers, thank you for that. Now we can live stream to you guys here. We will, of course, record it and put it up. So for those of you who can't make, the 2 p.m. Live stream, just check in later. We'll have the video posted.
Yeah, really looking forward to that, Gary, and that conversation that'll come up later this week. So be sure to subscribe. You'll get notified of when that's coming up and that live with Alex later this week. And as well, any questions, comments, tell us or rip us to shreds. Why are we wrong? We'd love to hear about it in the comments of this video.